Welcome back to the 5-5 Sports Podcast. I'm Darya Amirshahi, here as always with Evan and Matthew. However, this time we are also joined by one of our good friends, Darya, to talk a bit about soccer in addition to everything else. This includes the end of the NFL regular season, as well as talking a bit about the NBA and World Juniors. But let's start with football. Before we preview the playoffs and make our predictions, let's talk about the Sunday night game between Philadelphia and Washington. One of the highlights of this game was the benching of Jalen Hurts. What did you guys think of this decision?
It's just embarrassing. At the end of the day, the Eagles just lacked integrity, and sorry, not the Eagles, Doug Peterson specifically. And I don't know if GM Howie Roseman was involved in the decision, because I think if he wasn't, then Doug Peterson would have definitely been fired. So I think clearly they're both, working together on the fact that they wanted the 6th overall pick. So he said throw in Nate Sudfeld, but even the New York Jets at 0-14. With the possibility of drafting Trevor Lawrence, even those players and Adam Gase had enough pride to go out and play their hearts out every single week. And, despite the Jets fans wanting them to lose, they still stuck it out 1-2 games, despite, it not being the best for their for the organization, for the future of the organization. It's an embarrassing move by Doug Peterson. I don't know how any player would ever want to play for a guy that intentionally threw a game in the NFL. I have never in my life seen that happen, and Doug Peterson should be ashamed of what he did. That was as pathetic as it gets in the NFL.
Yeah, the thing is that, Philadelphia, the way Washington playing, Philadelphia wasn't even far from winning because Washington wasn't playing well. They're giving Eagles every chance to, to knock them out of the playoffs, but Doug Peterson just, intentionally chose not to go through it. Jalen Hurts was the only one. Jalen Hurts wasn't playing well, but he was the only one gaining points, and he says he was playing to win, which is clearly not true if he took off Jalen Hurts or Sudfeld.
Yeah, that's a lie. Playing to win.
Yeah, I think he said,
Nate Sudfeld didn't do anything when he came in. It was embarrassing trying to watch him play QB at an NFL level. But B, the play calling was also horrible. So Doug Peterson Doug Peterson, he may be the worst NFL coach I've ever won a Super Bowl. I don't know how he did it with Nick Foles. To this day, that is one of the greatest mysteries in NFL history.
Well, that was a much better defense at the time.
That's true, but Doug Peterson's still an idiot. So I really don't know how they pulled off a Super Bowl, beating some of the teams they did. Because, Chicago, they got a little lucky with a double doink. Minnesota just flat out didn't show up to play when they could have been the first team ever to play in a Super Bowl in their home stadium. So Philadelphia just kind of rode the momentum of that game and blew the doors off the Vikings that game after the Stephon Diggs miracle catch. But yeah, I really don't know how Doug Peterson pulled off a Super Bowl. I guess just sometimes you get hyped, you get a little good run, good fortune. But ever since the Super Bowl, the Eagles have been a horrible organization. They can't play. They flat out can't play football for 60 minutes.
That was a good Eagles team. That was a talented roster, and then
it was. But I'm saying comparing it to the rest of the teams they played, they just, and considering what we know about Doug Peterson now, it feels like it was just a fluke at this point. But with that being said, I can't believe that he intentionally threw the game. There's no other way to put it. We all know, even if Nate Sudfeld, was good, which we all knew he wasn't because he's 27. We know he's not a good QB. That's, the reality. The other thing is, if you're going to put another QB, if your excuse is Jalen Hurts is struggling, where's Carson Wentz?
Yeah.
A healthy scratch. I'm sorry. There's no such thing as a healthy scratch in the NFL. Look at Matt Stafford playing in a game that absolutely meant nothing, and he still, went out for his team trying to win that ball game. It's an absolute embarrassment, and if the game is on Sunday night, we may not be talking about it because we may have just forgotten about it. But it was prime time, and it's an embarrassing moment for the Eagles organization because I guarantee you the players on that team had way too much pride, and they probably I don't know how any of those players come back next year and play for Doug Peterson again. I just don't see it how it's possible.
We never seen something like this before. Because not just in football, in any sport, we never seen a coach intentionally throw a game like this. Completely blatantly disrespect the opponent and think, okay, this game doesn't matter. I'm not going to put the effort. If I lose this game, it's going to be because we didn't put our best foot forward. So we never seen anything like that happen. And look, Washington was a better team than the Eagles. Washington probably would be Eagles anyways. Even though they weren't playing the best, they probably could have easily beaten the
Well, look,
Eagles.
we know there's no NFC East team that's going to win the Super
Yeah.
Bowl. We get that, but there's it's a form of respect, and
Yeah, exactly.
Doug Peterson disrespected the entirety of the NFL and what it stands for.
Yeah.
And that is inexcusable. He should be
Agree with
fired.
that.
He should have been fired Sunday night, but we sit here Tuesday morning and he's still in a head coach position. So no one likes the Eagles anyway, so we hope for the worst for that team.
Okay, anyways, moving on to the games that are coming up for next week's wild card round. Who do each of you have for each matchup? Let's start with the Colts versus the Bills.
Matthew, I'll let you start.
This may be a controversial pick, but I'm going with the Colts because I think the Colts have a defense that can respond to Josh Allen, because Josh Allen is a talented QB. He has proven like the talent he has like this whole season with the way Buffalo's been playing. But I think Colts had an answer to him because Colts consistently look strong against talented QBs. Josh Allen is young. I'm not sure how he will do well because people are expecting a lot from the Bills, and they've never been in that situation before in any recent years because the Patriots are always head of the division. But so they're kind of in this uncharted territory where the Bills are the favorites. Josh Allen's a young QB who has to lead them there, and I'm not sold that this season will be the season that he actually takes them. So, and just because he's up against such a strong defense, I'm going with the Colts.
Evan?
Yeah, no. Oh,
Or
Yeah,
Darya,
Darya,
go.
yeah.
oh, sorry. No, I was just gonna say it's yeah, it's gonna be really hard to watch any team for the AFC East as a Patriot fan. But watching this game and specifically, I have to be honest. I do think that the Bills will come away from this one. I think it's probably the best team they've had in years, really. The only thing really that kind of makes me think otherwise is the fact that I don't know if they have that playoff experience really. I don't know if that will be a big factor in this game. And generally I like the Indianapolis team. So, but I would favor it for the Bills.
Oh yeah, I have to go with the Buffalo Bills. They've been hot right now, and really they're a Hail Mary away from being 14-2. I mean, outside the Chiefs, the Bills are the best team in the league. Josh Allen's playing superb, and I don't think Indy is going to be able to run the ball all over Buffalo, because I think Buffalo knows what the game plan is. If they could limit Jonathan Taylor and what he's able to do. We know Indy has a great O-line, so the key for Buffalo is getting pressure. It's going to be a close game. If you're a betting man, take the Colts to cover the 7 points, because it's not going to be a 7-point game. But it feels like Buffalo is just too strong. It's going to be a closely contested game for sure. I think it's going to be the game of the week, to be honest. I mean, it's playoff football. You got 6 games this week. They're all going to be, except for probably Washington, Tampa Bay. We all know that the games are going to be pretty closely contested, but Buffalo, I think, just is too strong. Their defense is playing really well, and I don't think Phillip Rivers is going to be able to move the offense well enough against Buffalo's defense consistently. And if Buffalo gets off to a good start, I think we have to remember that they lost to Houston last year, and they are going to probably take that experience of losing and take that momentum into this game. They're playing too well, and I think there's too much going for Buffalo, especially playing at home. They're going to have fans there. It's just so hard to see Indianapolis winning this game, despite the talent of their defense and the strength of Jonathan Taylor in the running game. I have to go with Buffalo for those reasons, because they're just playing so well right now. And I think there's 2 teams that could possibly beat them, and that's Tennessee and Kansas City. And even then, Buffalo probably beats both. Buffalo KC is probably going to be the AFC final, but until we get there, we don't know. I'm going to Buffalo, though.
Okay, so the next are, who are your picks for the Rams versus Seahawks?
I think I'm going with Seahawks because honestly, it's amazing because for the Rams, the quarterback is Jared Goff, and I think he's too inconsistent for me to be able to bet on the Rams. I think Jared Goff, when he's playing well, he's a very talented QB, but on an off day, he is the most destructive QB playing, because he makes the team can't do anything when he's not having like his best game. he has very high highs or very low lows. He has like almost no middle ground. And I think for a
Yeah.
team like Seahawks with an offense that'll continuously keep throwing the ball, they'll continuously gain scores. These two teams, they need to try to outscore each other. And I don't think that the Rams will have the firepower to kind of keep up with the Seahawks, especially since considering how like untrustworthy Goff is sometimes. And things like Goff, he does. It's not like he's even like playing well against good defenses, or playing bad against good defenses, and playing well against bad defenses. Like there's no consistency with them. It's really unpredictable. So because of that, I'm going to Seahawks.
The problem with unpredictable teams is they can really surprise you. I have to go with the Seahawks simply because I don't know if Jared Goff's playing. And if Jared Goff plays, we know we know that the Seahawks are going to win this game. But I just like the Seahawks because they're at home and they have Russell Wilson, and that gives them that's already two advantages that most teams don't have in the NFL. Yeah, just on the Rams, I think their defense is Rams have a great defense, and we've seen them consistently play very well on that side of the ball. And I think Seattle is going to have a lot of trouble running the ball. And if they don't run the ball, then the Rams are going to definitely be able to stay in there, hang in there. Because if you don't run, we know in the NFL, if you don't run the ball and you only have the pass option, then it's hard to really move the ball consistently on offense because teams kind of figure out what you're doing. The Rams have a great run defense and a very good pass defense. So I think if Jared Goff plays, it's going to be closer than we expect because Sean McVay is always going to come up with something creative to keep the offense going, to put points on the board. But I do give the edge to the Seahawks because you don't bet against Russell Wilson. You don't bet against the Seahawks at home. And the Seahawks defense, I think, is good enough to hold off that Rams offense. But if Jared Goff doesn't play, then I think we know.
Well, if Jared Goff's not playing, it's a different question.
Then
It's like different.
throw the game out. Congrats Seahawks. But I'm sure Jared Goff will play. It's a playoff game. It's an NFL player. They're tough. So I think I think this is going to be a game that a lot of people have the Seahawks in, but don't count the Rams out because the Rams are a good team. We can't forget that. There's still a team that won, I think, 10 games this year. 10, 11 games. 10 and 6.
I mean,
they're not a bad football team.
Seahawks. No,
exactly. And it's a division game, so you know both teams are going to be up for it.
Yeah, I got to agree with both of you. Honestly, it really does depend to me as well as if Jared Goff does play, and he has been very inconsistent. That is a big factor. But you see the way Russell Wilson's playing this season; it's some of the best, and the way he's going, I honestly can't see the Rams stopping him. I think the Seahawks have this in the bag.
Okay, so moving on, who do you have between the Buccaneers and Washington?
Don't count. No, sorry. I'll start. Don't count out the football team. You cannot. They have Alex Smith playing. And that's a big factor. I do like Washington's defense. The only way Washington keeps this game close is if they establish the running game. They need to get Antonio Gibson going early and quickly. I don't love Tampa Bay's run defense. I think they've given up a lot on the run. And if Alex Smith could find guys, if he could find Terry McLaurin downfield once in a while, if he could maybe get Steven Sims involved. Tampa Bay is a great team. We know about Tom Brady. I think they started to piece together that offense a lot more late in the year. And again, they have a lot of weapons, but I think it's a game where a lot of people are going to count Washington out. If Washington gets off to a good start, then it's going to be a tight finish. But if Tampa Bay gets off to a good start, it's over for Washington. So the start of the first half of this game is going to be key to know how this game is going to finish. Tampa Bay, definitely is never going to be out of the game. But if Washington gets off to a good start, pressure is definitely going to be on for the Buccaneers.
I agree with you on the fact that I'm not counting out the Washington football team because they are a good team. They have the capabilities to limit Buccaneers. But that being said, I still put Buccaneers as my favorites to win because they are just a more talented team overall. They have more talented offense, and Brady, he's been there before, and even though Brady's not the same, he's not the same like Tom Brady was in the prime days of New England. But when it comes down to being able to take games, being able to finish, he can make the plays that he needs, and he's been here before. He's been here many times. I'm betting on him to be able to take this game, especially against Washington. Washington's a good team, don't get me wrong, but they aren't the toughest opponents that the Buccaneers are going to face. And I think if there's a game that the Buccaneers do win, it will be against Washington.
Yeah, no, it's the whole story with Alex Smith on Washington is honestly a very inspiring story for me. I'm really Going into this game is going to be really bizarre, seeing Tom Brady against Alex Smith, and knowing both their stories from before this, even in the offseason and everything. It's going to be a very interesting game. I'm really rooting personally for Washington. I really want to see that story come to life with Alex Smith.
Or more because you don't want to see Brady win outside New England.
That's besides the point. That's besides the point. You're right there.
Don't worry, Brady's not winning the Super Bowl this year. Don't worry.
But
I guarantee you anything, it's that.
In all truth, I do think that Tampa Bay will win this game. I'm hoping not, but I just think they generally have the firepower, and that is something we knew from the regular season, and that's going to carry over. And I do think Tom Brady, as usual, has that clutch factor of him, and we'll have to see. But I think Tampa will edge this one.
Okay, moving on to the Sunday games. Who do you have between the Ravens and the Titans?
If you ask me before playoffs start, if you ask me what are the two players I don't want to go up against during the playoffs, one of them would have been Patrick Mahomes, and the other one would have been Derrick Henry. Because I just have PTSD from seeing the Ravens try to stop Derrick Henry. That being said, I have to just say I believe that the Ravens can do it because look, we have the talent on the team. We have the talent on defense. When he's having a good game, we know what Lamar can do. We know what he's capable of. And look, Evan, you can tell me all the reasons why you don't think Lamar will win a playoff game. And honestly, look, I'm not going to say that you're wrong for thinking these things because from what we've seen so far, yeah, you have a point. But that being said, we've only seen 2 years of Lamar, or we're just now in his third season. We've seen his game grow from his first season, and I'm thinking, and I'm also hoping he can finally take that next step forward as a quarterback and win a playoff game. I'm not saying that he will, but if you're asking me if I think it's possible, I think it is. So if you're asking who I'll take, I'm taking the Ravens because I'm not going to just bet against my team. That being said, I'm very afraid of Derrick Henry, so that's my biggest concern. But I'm hoping that this defense has response. And look, John Harbaugh's a great coach. If there's a coach that couldn't figure out, John Harbaugh is one of them. So I'm hoping that, unlike last season, he has an answer. Because this time, we're expecting the Titans to be a threat. We didn't really expect that from last season. We see it coming more. So now I'm hoping that we have a bit more contingencies in place to limit what Henry can do. And I can see smirking, so just say whatever you want now, Evan.
I'll Darya go first.
You know what? I'm gonna actually echo with Troy. I actually do think the Ravens will win this one. And I understand as well the criticism that there is, especially with Lamar Jackson and how he's been this season. But you know what? This is a revenge game. I think the Ravens do need to win this game. I think there needs to be a point proven, and it really does depend on, for me, Lamar Jackson. There's a lot of things that happened last season, and even when it comes to regular season, that I think he needs to prove. And I think this has to be the game he does it. He really does. If they lose, it's the same story. We'll keep going. Evan, Troy, we'll be talking about this for another year. I just can't see it and see another year of this, where everyone's criticizing him and how he is in the playoffs. But you know what? I think this will be the game that they get revenge over the Titans.
Thank you.
For the Ravens to win, they have to run the ball well. Tennessee's D-line is probably the weakest out of the teams left in the playoffs, and the way they win the game is they have to run the ball down the throat, and they have to execute on the pass. Here's my issue with Baltimore. I don't think they're going to do that. It's a tough game to call, but I think Mike Vrabel, he's a smart man, and I think offensively, I think Baltimore's going to have a lot of trouble stopping Derrick Henry because I think we all know that Derrick Henry is a threat, but what we saw last year is Ryan Tannehill is so good at mixing into play action, and their receivers are so good. When you look at AJ Brown, Corey Davis, and whoever the third guy is, they have a third or fourth guy that can run a route downfield or something. I think we saw it was Humphreys last year that caught the second touchdown against the Ravens. I think it was number 10 or 14 that caught the second touchdown. And just Mike Vrabel's offense is he's one of the smartest offensive coaches in the league. I think it's gonna be close. It's not gonna be a blowout like last year because I think the Ravens have too much pride and they're a much more experienced team coming off that loss. But it's just when you have Derrick Henry and when you have the threat of the play action from Ryan Tannehill, they have that kind of mix on offense where it's almost a match made in heaven for those two. They complement each other so well, and we've seen Derrick Henry in December and January, playoff Henry. He's going to be a tough guy to stop. And your only chance of winning this game is if you limit Derrick Henry, I'd say to under 100 yards. But Tennessee, they're a tough team to be in the playoffs. And I think I have to go with Tennessee. I have to go with what history tells me. It's not me even being anti-Ravens. I just think Tennessee is going to be the team more prepared, and I think they're going to be the more confident team going into Sunday. I'm not saying it's not going to be a blowout by any means, but I'm predicting Tennessee to win that game simply because I don't think Baltimore's going to have the answers to Tennessee's offense.
Honestly, that's fair because we know what Tennessee's capable of. We know that how much firepower they have on that offense. I'll say this though, I do think that the roles between the two teams have switched from last year. Ravens were the obvious favorites last season. And
I don't know if Tennessee are favorites though. I think it's a 50-50. I don't think anyone's kind of calling one team favorite. Baltimore's favored by 3.5 points through Vegas. I think you're going to call yourself an underdog is ridiculous because Baltimore is a team with a better record. I think going into it 50-50. There's no underdog favorite. I think it's a game where the better team's going to win.
But I'll say what you're saying. I think people are expecting Lamar to not come through in the playoffs because we've seen that happen for 2 years. I think people are expecting that. Some
people are going to be, on the opposite end. Some people are going to be like you, saying it's about time Baltimore wins that game. It's a revenge game. Baltimore's going to come out firing and they're going to win the game. I think there's a lot of opinions going both ways. I don't think it's fair to call one team an underdog, one team a favorite. It's an even game going into it, and the better team's going to win. I think that's the bottom line.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, so now who do you pick between the Bears and the Saints?
The Saints. The Bears suck. Mitch Trubisky. I mean, honestly, the Saints are probably the best chance for the Bears in the NFC, but I don't think either team are favorites simply because Drew Brees just looks old. Look, the Bears defense, if they can keep them alive and, maybe keep it a low-scoring game, kind of, I don't know. The Saints score early, then it's done, but I don't think Kamara's going to have a lot of success against the Bears' run defense. I think it's going to be a closer game than people expect. If you're a betting man, again, take the Bears and the points because the Bears' defense keeps them alive week in, week out. If the Bears can maybe put a few points up early, then I think we're going to be talking about a close game. But, I mean, if you can't bet on Mitch Trubisky ever. So I have to think the Saints are going to win, but I think it's going to be closer than people expect.
I'm going to actually just disagree with you and say I think the Bears will win this game because the Saints haven't impressed me at all this season. And I think the only highlight of that offense is Kamara, and against the Bears defense, I don't know how well he'll do because the Bears have one of the best run defenses in the league right now. In terms of the biggest concern of the Bears will be Mitch Trubisky because he's just overall not a great quarterback. But their offense has looked better later in the season than it has earlier. Dave Montgomery is a talented running back, and if the offensive line can give him enough room, I think it's possible for him to have another great game. And I'm just not convinced on the Saints because Drew Brees has not looked good this season. I think what he offers to the team is still he's a good leader. He brings leadership to the team, but in terms of the talent of throwing football, he hasn't really done much. Michael Thomas has been injured for most season, and when he hasn't played, he had maybe 2 good weeks. I'm not convinced on the Saints. I think people are sleeping on the Bears a lot because their offense is kind of underwhelming, but they have such a strong defense. And since the Saints aren't that much of an offensive threat as other teams are, I think this would be the game that the Bears win. I don't have the Bears going far by any means, but I do think that they'll take this game.
And Matthew, now that you said that, and all that being said, and knowing the NFL and the Saints being 10 points favorites in the playoff game, and everyone's going to maybe take the Bears and the points, this is going to be the one blowout of the weekend. With all that being said, it just came to me. I realized that you're completely wrong, and you think the way that every NFL fan thinks. And I was thinking like you. I have to admit, I was thinking the Bears team's going to keep it close. Maybe they find a way, but I just remember Mitch Trubisky sucks. Saints to win by 1 billion. I just realized if you're a betting man, sorry, I said take the Bears and the points, take the Saints to cover 10. I just realized it's a trap game. Saints going to blow the doors off that team.
Okay, well
that's my prediction. I just realized that you're thinking exactly like I am, and we're thinking wrong. Saints in a blowout.
Darya, what do you think?
I gotta be honest. I do agree with Evan on this. I have to be honest. I don't really rate that Bears team at all. It's really just their defense. And to me, a quarterback like Trubisky is just it ain't good enough. I'm sorry. In terms of that Saints team, I do agree with you on one point. I don't think they've impressed me this season. Specifically, Drew Brees hasn't been his usual self. Michael Thomas has been injured. Kamara has been fantastic, though. And you're right. Potentially, the Bears could stop Kamara, right? Here's the thing, though. I think what we forget is how good Drew Brees can be on his day. I don't know if he'll show up. And to me, I think he will. I think he will. I think it's a playoff atmosphere. You kind of need that from your best quarterback, and you do need your running game to be top notch. So, to be honest, I think it's a pretty one-sided game. I could see where your head is at, Troy, but at the same time, I gotta say I'm thinking like Evan. I think it's a blowout in this one personally.
Look at Evan disagreeing just for the sake of disagreement.
Well, no, I realized I was thinking that the Bears are going to keep it close. Then I realized that everyone's thinking like that, and the Saints going to kill them.
Okay.
I
Just talking to you, I realized that it's probably going to be a blowout for the Saints, and they're going to win by double digits. And if you are a betting man, take Saints to cover the 10 points.
I mean, look, I'm not going to say you're wrong because on paper, Saints look better than Bears. Like that's not. Like,
we'll come back next week and we'll see if the Bears do get that upset. Yeah. Time will tell.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the final one, who do you pick between the Browns and the Steelers?
God, I hate both teams. I mean, not in the sense. I mean, I don't like the Steelers. The Browns are just the Browns, but I mean, both teams are just so overrated. It's tough because you're picking between Baker Mayfield and injured Big Ben. History tells you that Pittsburgh's defense is good enough. TJ Watt's been Defensive Player of the Year. He's been phenomenal all year. So the Browns have to do damage limitation on him. But I think there's been cracks in the in the Steelers secondary. The problem is I don't know what Browns receiver is going to hurt them. We've seen the emergence of Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's starting to maybe catch a few balls from Baker Mayfield. He's starting to get some chemistry with him. The Browns have a lot of like receivers and tight ends that can catch the ball, but just no one really has there's no standout player on that team. So the Browns have to, if they're going to win, they have to get a balanced attack and they have to get all those guys involved. It's not going to be, one man show. It's not going to be the Jarvis Landry show. We know they don't have Odell Beckham, so they have to move the ball. They have to move the ball well. They have to find, 7 or 8. There's going to be probably at least 9-10 guys that end up catching a reception. They have to catch Steelers off guard. I'm not gonna take the Browns. I don't think they're good enough. I'm gonna pick the Steelers in the defensive battle, like 20-17. I'll go with the Steelers to edge it out, just because I will never trust Baker Mayfield in a playoff game ever.
Steelers easily. Next question. Honestly, I'm okay about that part, but honestly, it is Steelers easily because I never thought the Browns looked that good this season. I think they had good games, but I think most of them have been against very easy opponents.
They're going to play with a lot of heart, though. The Browns are going to play with a lot of heart. As much as we like to slander Baker Mayfield, you can never question, his love of football. You see how much you see his intensity week in, week out, but his intensity doesn't match his talent. But Kevin Stefanski's done a pretty good job with that team. The question is, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, how effective are they going to be on the run game? They have to run the ball well, but the Steelers, we know they limit the run very well. So it's really going to come down to, can Nick Chubb move the ball well enough to keep the Browns alive late in the game? I think no matter what, if the Steelers are within one possession, they'll just find a way to win. And it's hard to pick Baker Mayfield in a playoff game, especially considering the fact that Cleveland historically lets you down.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying. Baker Mayfield, you said he puts a heart, and I give him credit for that. But he had a good rookie season, and people have been still thinking that Baker Mayfield is that quarterback of Cleveland, future quarterback of Cleveland, and he just isn't anything special as a QB. He's not the worst QB in the league by any means, but he's just not very good. And I wouldn't bet on him in the playoffs.
Yeah, we're in agreement there.
I gotta be honest with you guys. I'm not as clear cut with you guys with Pittsburgh, and here's why. I don't necessarily I agree with what you're saying with the Cleveland Browns and especially with Baker Mayfield himself. Here's the thing though, that Pittsburgh team hasn't impressed me since Thanksgiving. They really have it. And yes, do they have a team that should be winning this game? Absolutely. They're 4-point favorites, right? I can see why everybody would say. I'm gonna be honest here. I have a weird, suspicious feeling that the Browns are gonna win this game, and it is not because necessarily they're gonna be that great. There's something about that Pittsburgh team that doesn't sit well with me. They had a perfect record going for a long time this season, and as soon as they got their loss, you saw a little bit of the momentum in the second half of the season really dip. Now, do I think it's as given? Like, would I bet necessarily on the Browns winning? I don't know. That's the thing. It's a tough one. I just don't think it's as clear cut as you guys are making it out to be. I don't know.
I mean, no, I decided. I think it's going to be defensive battle. I think it's going to be like a 2017, 2016 game. The over-under is 46. I'm telling you right now, take the under because neither team's going to be scoring a lot of points. No, I'm not saying Pittsburgh's a shoo-in. I find it very hard to imagine Cleveland winning, especially considering Pittsburgh's 7-1 at home. It feels like the game just favors them, but it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility. In football, anything can happen. I just think the Steelers have the edge in close games. If the blowout, then it's going to probably be the Steelers if they can figure it out. But I mean, I think it's going to be a low-scoring dogfight, NFC North game. I just give the edge to the Steelers.
The teams to pick for this game, it's not going to be because we have like faith in the Steelers. It's going to be because we have like a lack of faith in the Browns because there's just not enough on that team to really kind of give us a sense that they can really go far in playoffs or even win a playoff game for that matter. And like I said, they haven't been convincing even in their wins for the most part. They haven't really been a dominant team throughout the season. And like you said, like this whole division in a sense is a little overrated. But I think that's the strongest case for the Browns because people are kind of on the hype of them having a better season than most years because before the season, they've always been a complete joke. But I think just because they're slightly better than that, I think people are kind of overrating them than as a better team than they actually are.
We're in agreement. We don't think both teams are actually Super Bowl contenders. We both think they have their flaws. We're trying to evaluate, who's going to win this game, and it could go either way. It really could. There's no, clear-cut winner, but we're in agreement that we both think Steelers. Darya, you got the Browns. I mean, there's no way to say who's right or wrong at this point because both teams have their flaws. Both teams have struggled at times, but both teams do have their strengths. So we're really going to see how it comes together Sunday night.
Okay, so moving on from football and onto basketball, like what we did last week, I'm going to ask you guys about the Raptors and then the rest of the league in general, but we're going to start with the Raptors. Should we be worried yet?
Yeah, panic button. Where is it? Hit the panic button. This team can't hit a shot. They can't rebound. Losing Serge Ibaka is, his impact is clearly had a much it's had a much more immediate impact than we thought it could possibly have. They just have no size. Their defense isn't what it used to be. OG's not playing well. Siakam's playing horribly right now.
Can I just say one thing on Siakam?
Yeah,
you
go right
thought
ahead.
That him not playing well in the bubble was just him not playing well in the bubble?
I don't know who thought that. Siakam didn't have a great year even throughout the regular season last year. I didn't.
I think it was you when we were talking about how Siakam was not playing well in the bubble. You said, it's just in the bubble. He's having a rough time. He was playing well before. Now he's out of the bubble. They're in a new season, and he's still not playing well.
I mean, he definitely had a down season without Kawhi Leonard. I think we were just hoping kind of Siakam was going to be that guy, but he's not really the modern NBA player. Can't shoot. If he feels like a very one-dimensional player. The spin moves is not working anymore. The league's figured it out. The problem is I don't see it getting better for Siakam it can't get worse, but it's not going to get drastically better for him. People are saying trade for James Harden. I think it's ridiculous because at the end of the day, you're not winning a title with James Harden, especially considering the fact that you have to give up at least Pascal. You give up Siakam, you probably have to give up OG and a bunch of picks. Is that really worth it at this point? No, I think you really do have to start over because at this point you build around Freddie and OG, find a big man in the draft somewhere, maybe, sign some free agents. It's not impossible to turn this around, but it's not going to be with this core of players. And even if they make the playoffs this year, it's going to be as a 7 or 8 seed, nothing higher.
The reason why I'm not worried personally is because I didn't have that high hopes for this season. Like, I didn't think that this team would.
I mean, it's not about worry. We knew
Really-
this team wasn't great.
Yeah,
We knew that the
we knew
East
the
got
team was
stronger,
capable of-
but we didn't think they'd look as bad as they did because they can't play defense and they can't shoot. They're one of the most inefficient. I think they are the most inefficient team in the entire league. That's a concern. And they played a depleted Boston yesterday. Their one threat was Jason Tatum, and then let them do whatever they want. That team just doesn't have an answer to anything right now, and that's where I'm concerned.
Well, I agree with you with.
It's not that our expectations were high for them. They weren't. It's how bad they actually look.
Well, what I agree with you with is that I think it's time for like there's not going to be just core players where we get back into playoff contention because, look, we won a championship. This team, it ran its course. We've been like a playoff contending team for the last decade, or for the most part of the last decade. It's about time that like we kind of step out of it because we need. It's time for every team, every legacy of great teams that come to an end. Unfortunately, Raptors only got one championship out of the decade of being a top team in the East, but.
Look, most teams don't win a
day.
championship. I mean, it's not that, we only won one championship. I'm very happy we won one championship.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing that one.
There's about 10 to 12 teams. I've never won a championship.
Yeah.
And teams that are older than the Raptors. Look, the championship season was fantastic. They played great basketball. Nick Nurse was fantastic. Everything worked. Everything fell into place.
The air's done. Like, the air's come to the end.
Yeah, because Golden State lost Durant and Klay Thompson. I mean, no one's beating Golden State healthy, but it kind of fell into place where we beat three very good teams. Orlando was a good team. They were, the strongest team out of the bottom four that year. Yeah. And then they had to beat a very good Philadelphia team and a very good Milwaukee team, one of the best regular season teams we've ever seen. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not that we only won one ring. It's, it's hard to win a ring. It was fantastic, but this team isn't winning another one anytime soon. I think that's kind of where we're going at. It's not that, we're sad we only won. We're grateful that we got it.
It's not sad that
we won a championship ring. That was one of the best 3 weeks of my life, but
it's not sad that we won one ring. It's sad that after that,
it's time to now just exactly. It's time to reevaluate where we are. It's time to find a way to move on from Siakam because clearly he's a one-dimensional player that doesn't fit the modern NBA.
This happens with every team. You're supposed to expect that sooner or later.
That's still Masai Ujiri. You're still going to draft great guys no matter what. The only bad draft pick we've seen that we could actually say for sure that we know is a bad draft pick was a Bruno Caboclo, and we've already forgotten about him. Those days are long over. So, yeah, it's simply time to reevaluate with the Raptors. Darya, I'll let you kind of add on what's going on with the Raptors, but yeah, they can't shoot, they can't play defense, they can't rebound, they can't play simple basketball. I've seen rec basketball teams with more fundamentals than this Raptors team 6 games into a season.
Excuse my film analogy here, but to be honest, the way I look at this Raptors team, especially when we had Kawhi Leonard was the Batman and you had Robin Siakam. That was honestly how I saw this team. And the problem is when Batman's gone, Robin's not doing what he needs to do.
Great analogy. Phenomenal analogy.
Simply this team with Siakam, you're right. He's one-dimensional. He has not improved. And we saw glimpses last year. Aviva kind of mentioned he wasn't great in the bubble. He wasn't.
That was horrible in the bubble.
We were making whether it being Evan or whoever it was, we were making excuses because we want to also believe that he is going to be a better player.
Yeah, it wasn't me. It was Matthew for sure.
Honestly, that was because we saw glimpses as well of him being a superstar last year as well, before the bubble. But we were wrong on that because he didn't live up to low glimpses we saw of him. Because he did have a great season last year, regular season, but he fell off during the playoffs, fell off during the bubble, and he just hasn't come back since. And now that he hasn't come back, you have to kind of be realistic about where the future of Raptors are headed.
And it's simply that this core, look, we can all agree. You kind of said, Evan, those 3 weeks when we're watching the Raptors win the chip was incredible. Some of the best things we've seen in Toronto in the last decade. But here's the fact: the core is just not there anymore. It's an aging core. We kind of knew it every season so far since the championship. These 2 seasons, we've seen a decrease in quality and the way we've been playing basketball, or just generally throughout the team. And we have players that kind of need to transition out. We've lost a lot of people in the offseason, and we had a lot of belief we were getting someone like Giannis, for example, and we didn't get it. We were looking at stuff such as this. thinking we were going to get these players, but ultimately we look at where we are now. We're 1-5. We have an aging core, and players are just simply not performing.
It's not an aging core. It's just Kyle Lowry's aging. Fred VanVleet's probably not in his prime yet. Maybe in the next year or two, he'll be entering his prime. OG's in his prime. Siakam, I guess, is in his prime, but I guess his prime isn't very good. So they need young pieces around the guys that are going to be in their prime. They need to start to surround it. It's not going to be James Harden. Let's be honest. So they have, whether they draft a superstar like Milwaukee did in Jan, look, it's not impossible. The Raptors still have pieces where if they get a great player if they find a gem in the draft, then we could be talking about a different team in a year or two. But as we stand today, we're not very good. And it's fine to admit that.
Look, I don't think we should even be that worried because, look, if we're rebuilding, but we still have Nick Nurse as our coach and Sadi Ujiri still running things, I don't think a rebuild is going to take all that long.
It's not doom and gloom for the Raptors. I think before we move on from this topic, it's not doom and gloom. Just Darya said, as a Toronto sports fan, it's been in the last 20 years, it's been this Toronto Raptors team. And unless you're a TFC fan, you got TFC winning one championship. I mean, they lost 2 finals, but they still won the championship. The Blue Jays, with their, all-star team, couldn't get it done in 2015, 2016. So, I mean, the Raptors were the pinnacle. That was the, moment for Toronto sports fans. That was the moment we've been waiting for. And even if you're an older fan, if you're in your 40s, 50s, the only thing you had before was the 1992-93 Jays. So, as a sports fan, that's as good as it got for Toronto sports fans. So, be happy it happened. It's not happening this year, and that's fine. You reevaluate, you move on, and you have pieces in the front office that understand basketball. So it's not doom and gloom. They have a lot of smart men in charge of that team in the front office that can pull it back together and get them to maybe be contenders sooner rather than later. But it's not happening this year. That's, I guess, where we are, and I think we've kind of rehashed that over the last 10 minutes, but that's where we are sitting here on Tuesday, January the 5th.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about the rest of the league? What are some things that stuck out?
I think one thing we have to say, Steph Curry, 62 points. What a performance. But I think outside that, I'm going to go with a player that got a lot of preseason hype, but before maybe he gets really recognized, I'm going to call out his name, Christian Wood. He is a phenomenal player for the Houston Rockets. If you haven't watched him yet, go check him out. What a excellent shot blocker. His hands are fantastic. Inside, he is a presence. He's one of those centers that's going to be a young star in this league. Christian Wood, watch out because he's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I gotta say, Christian Wood, he's been really impressive this season, and I'm not overly high on the Rockets, but I think he has definitely been one of the highlights. Of course, apart from the talent that are the main players they have on the team. But I actually want to talk a bit more about Steph Curry. I think he's been very. I think when I see Steph Curry, he kind of reminds me of Durant in the sense that a year ago we didn't have Curry for the majority of the season, just like how we didn't have Durant. And it's odd because before that, you could argue that Durant and Curry both considered top 5 players in the league. And it was kind of weird having that season of them not being there. And you kind of, when you talk about all the top players, you didn't really say Durant, you didn't say Curry because they simply just weren't there. But now they're kind of in that conversation again. And I think people kind of forgot how great Steph Curry was. And I think that's crazy because Steph Curry, I think we agree that he's the best shooter of all time, of all NBA.
Oh yeah.
And I think now, and it's weird to say that people are kind of forgot how talented he was and how ability he was able to do. But I think now, especially without Clay, we see him kind of willing Golden State into being a threat because it kind of reminds me of. It kind of reminds me a lot of Kobe in his around 2008, 2010. We had players like Gasol, he had players like Ron Artest, but it was really Kobe kind of just willing that team to being a contender. And kind of now Curry is kind of just that one guy who's really trying to carry everything. And Curry, from what I've seen so far, he has to score over 30 for Golden State to win. If he doesn't score over 30, the team's going to lose. It all comes down to him. But here's the thing: I think he's able to take that pressure. He's able to come through with it.
Yeah, no, I have to say, I think we can all agree, Curry's had a very strange past few years with his injuries and with so many changes going on in Golden State. It's actually remarkable to see how much his career has managed to stay afloat. I mean, we can all admit like he's kind of fallen off in this sense where I don't know if this Golden State is a championship team anymore. I don't think it is. But you know what? You have to give it to him. And you said it. He's one of the best shooters in the NBA. And he continues to put performances like he did last night, which are very just kind of him and his prime, really him, how he was when they were winning championships against the Cavaliers and such. So, it's good to see that he's still playing at that level. And I think it's great that we are in an era that he's still playing there at that level, really. And I don't know if he'll continue. They're 4-3. But who knows? When Steph Curry's on your team, you can't count any team out right now. So, hey.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then plus, like, a lot of people, because he had Durant for 2 of those championships, like, people kind of, like, forget how valuable Curry is, which is, I think, crazy to say because, like I said, he's such a talented player. But, like I said before, it's nice to see him kind of taking that charge again. And, I agree with you. Golden State's going to win the championship, but he is still making them a threat because of how good he is.
Yeah, there's about 5 or 6 teams that are championship contenders. When you look at Golden State, Curry's a great shooter of all time. We know that. So, I mean, they're going to be a good team. They're going to be a dangerous team to play against. And he backed up at 62 points, and he dropped another 35, 9 and 8 against Sacramento. He's playing well right now. So we'll see how Golden State fares late in the season.
Now we're going to quickly go to talk about the Soccer Premier League. Okay, what do you guys make about the wide open title race?
It's fascinating to watch, isn't it, Darya? I mean, we
man.
haven't seen it, I think, ever. Even when Leicester won, where it's kind of wide open, it was really only 3 teams that in 2016 was between Leicester, Arsenal, Spurs. I mean, as we're sitting at the midway point for most teams, some games have a game or 2 in hand, but we're not even halfway through. No one's played 18 games yet, so we're not even halfway through the season. And there's about 8 teams that could win the Premier League still. If someone pieces it together, it could be lights out for the rest of the league because no one has shown any sign of any consistency so far this year.
It's amazing. I think this is as a neutral, like I obviously I'm talking as a United fan, you're talking a Chelsea fan, but as a neutral, this must be an incredible title race to just watch. It's coming down to one of the best in Premier League in the decade, or at least since the Premier League began, because it's so open. You have so many teams, even some of the teams that you wouldn't expect, such as Southampton, Everton, and it's just so crazy to see so many teams performing at a different level, beating the big teams. No, everyone's beating each other. Literally, it is very, very open. And I think there have been teams that have been more consistent than others, at least recently. And of course, I'm going to talk as a United fan. It's been a little bit more consistent. But I think you and I were talking to off camera. We were saying that United can lose against Burnley, and all of a sudden, it's wide open. Once again, another team will come up again.
And no one would be surprised. I think the funny thing is no one would be surprised. I think I have to ask you, who is going to, if you have to sit here today and make a prediction, I know it's because you can never make predictions, especially in this year's Premier League. But if you had to make a prediction, I'll give you who I think is going to win the title. But who is going to win the title if you're sitting here midway, not even midway through the season?
Oh man, that's a hard question, man.
No, yeah, I'll give you this. If you had 3 contenders, if you had 3 teams that could win it, if you could, single out 3 teams that can win it, who would you go for?
I definitely say Liverpool. Liverpool are in it till the end. I think I could be biased when I say this. I genuinely do think United's in a title race. I don't think they're going to win it. And my third one is actually going to be City. And it's simply because their defense has improved this season. And that was a big factor last season that we were always talking about. That being said, can't discount anyone, can you? Like, at this point.
No, you're right. Even a team like Spurs, you're just notorious for choking. I mean, you still have Harry Kane, I mean, every team has players that if they get it right on that day, they can win the game. There's no, and then you have factors like VAR. There's so many factors that are going into a Premier League game today. It's impossible to predict. I think if I have to predict a winner at this point, I have to predict Man City. They have 2 games in hand, so if they win those, they'll be 1 point. I believe or they'd jump ahead of Liverpool. I think if they win their 2 games in hand, and if United win their game in hand, then City's 1 point behind. I think defensively they're very strong, and I think they just have so much depth. I think this season is going to come to depth because the games are going to come fast and furious over the next 4 months, and I think depth's going to play a huge factor in that. Because I think if they lose a player or 2 to injury, I don't think they'll have much trouble replacing them. They have 3 center backs that they could rotate in and out with Laporte, Diaz, and Stones, who've all been terrific. Kyle Walker is as consistent as it gets as at the right back position. And I think João Cancelo's done an excellent job at left back. The midfield, you still have Kevin De Bruyne in there. And whether you want to throw in guys like Gundogan, who, 50-50 if he plays great or not. Bernardo Silva, Phil Foden's been terrific this year. I think Phil Foden's been an emergence playing with Kevin De Bruyne. You can understand his smarts and his kind of footballing brain and his IQ and his technical ability. Phil Foden's been, every time I think he stepped on the pitch, he's been pretty faultless. And when you compare him to other youngsters like, Greenwood and Saka, he's been the one guy that is almost been more consistent than those two. I mean, they both have brilliant. All 3 of those guys have brilliant futures, and even guys like Callum Hudson-Odoi and Martinelli. There's a lot of youngsters in the Premier League, but to me, Phil Foden has been the most consistent, and he's been the most standout performer. Looking at those crop of guys that are going into the next phase of their careers, but it's tough to bet against City right now. I think if they get Aguero back and Aguero starts firing, I think it's lights out for the rest of the league. They started out really slowly, City, but they started picking up against worse teams. They found their form against Newcastle and Burnley, blowing them out. And we're kind of seeing the City of old, not quite the unbeatable City of old, but we're seeing a version of City that is going to be hard to beat consistently for some of these Premier League clubs. I think they're less likely to draw points against teams that they shouldn't at this point. I think Liverpool, there's too many problems at defense, and unless they get Van Dijk back to finish the year, then I don't see how they're going to maintain it. It feels like they've been so good for the last 2 years that this was their year to kind of drop off, and we've seen that. You can't draw to West Brom and Fulham. Those are 2 teams that are bottom 5, probably relegated teams. Those are inexcusable. Then you lose to Southampton. You could see that Liverpool doesn't have the same kind of juju that they had over the last 2 years. VAR is going against them as well as Jurgen Klopp is never short to point out the biggest complainer out of any Premier League manager. For me, it feels like a burnout year for Liverpool. It feels like a year that, especially without backups to Salah and Mane, if they're not firing, they will struggle. I think to me, it's between Liverpool and United until they drop out. And the reason I'm United, Bruno Fernandes has that kind of Hazard impact that we saw in 2014 when they won the league. He's going to be PFA Player of the Year without a doubt. He's already won PFA Player of the Year, midway through the year. Fernandes, he's firing on all cylinders. I don't think he's going to be like that every single game the rest of the year, which concerns me because United's defense does have their issues in marking with, whether it's Harry Maguire, Wan-Bissaka, it always seems like someone's cut out of position at one point or another. But with that being said, it's going to be interesting to see how long United could hang on to the title race, because they're contenders until they aren't. But any of the top, 10 teams, if they could go on a run of, 10 unbeaten, like we saw United do, now they're top of the table. If another team does that, then they could be top of the table real quick because they're separated by, no less than 5 points. That's why it's so exciting going into the final stage of this year.
Look, what I will say is this: obviously, I'm gonna be so excited to see what happens with United, and I'm gonna be biased in saying that I do think we're in title contention. And to be honest, a lot of fans are thinking that because it's been 8 years since anything like that has happened. So I personally still think we're not going to win the league. I would be fine with it with a going up as a run up or something like that, because to me that would have shown improvement considering where we started the season. And yeah. I genuinely do think we're a defender away from becoming a team such as that. I don't think we are. I think Bruno is a phenomenal player, as you say. He's probably going to be PFA Player of the Year. And here's the thing: I always thought about it like, what happens when he gets injured? What happens to this United team to fill in that gap? And ultimately, we go back to decide that was when before we signed him, which wasn't a great side. We were very lacking depth. And like, look, you bring in Diallo, which is going to be interesting. I'm excited to see some young talent in the team. That being said, look, I can understand why people are saying City or Liverpool. I really do. I think at this moment, although United is in a somewhat of a driver's seat, they can easily lose out on this, and then another team can come in. We honestly, Spurs. I'm not obviously like I don't think they will. Chelsea, same thing. I don't think they will, but you know what? They're not. They're 7 points.
Yeah,
It's
just
not.
nothing's impossible at this stage.
Yeah. It's a crazy season. One of the best ones, and I am so excited to see what the conclusion is going to come from this.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to 10 questions.
Okie dokes. So now we move on to our segment where we answer 10 questions in a not so rapid fire type of way. Should Doug Peterson continue as the coach of the Eagles?
No, he has no integrity. I think he's just lost respect from the entire NFL world. I don't know how you come back from that. It's as clear as tanking a game as you can possibly get for that reason alone. Doug Peters, I don't know. Should he be allowed to coach the Eagles? No, he shouldn't be allowed to coach even the CFL. He's done in this league.
Troy?
I agree with you on that. I'm gonna say no, and it's honestly ignoring the fact of what he did. He just isn't overall. He just overall isn't a very good head coach. But with that, I think he lost respect from the league as a whole, and I don't think he doesn't just deserve to not be a coach of the Eagles. He doesn't deserve to be an NFL coach. Period.
Daria?
Yeah, I gotta agree with you guys. I don't think he should. I think what happened against Washington is just not great, and I honestly don't think it's a good thing to have him on board anymore at this point.
Okay. Most attractive NFL coaching vacancy?
It's between two. It's between the Chargers and it's between the Jaguars. Like the Jaguars are really just missing a QB and they're getting Trevor Lawrence. They have, great young players on offense and on defense. You're playing in sunny Jacksonville. How can you not like that? Whether you're going to Jacksonville or LA, I think those are the two most attractive teams because you got Herbert in LA. It's rare that you find it's rare you find a head coaching vacancy with a QB as good as Justin Herbert. So both teams, I lean towards Jacksonville simply because you're there and you have a great core.
I'm gonna say I'm gonna go more Chargers. I understand what you're saying for Jacksonville, but I'm just gonna Chargers because Herbert's a feature star as QB, and they already have established receivers like Keenan Allen, and they have a great running back in Austin Eckler. I think just the right coach can make that team a deep contender, and I think it's an easy pick.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I think the Chargers are definitely my team as well. I think they have a good receiving core that is there, and I do think Herbert's an awesome QB. I'm excited to see what they can do.
Okay. Who is the NFL non-quarterback MVP?
I have to go with TJ Watt. Without him, Pittsburgh's defense isn't as strong as it is, and he makes them the number one defense in the league. A special player every game that Pittsburgh play, he makes about 5 or 6, even more impact plays, at least 5 to 6 impact plays per game. You look at the impact Aaron Donald's had over the years. I think TJ Watt's had that kind of season. So credit to him, credit TJ Watt.
Time.
I'm going to go with Derrick Henry because it's the value he brings to that Tennessee offense. And not to say discrediting other pieces in the offense because they do have other great offensive pieces like Tannehill, A.J. Brown, and Corey Davis. But Henry is just a different being. Like, he is so hard to stop. He is a great runner. There's really no answer defenses really have for him. He's brings such a valuable asset to the team.
Yeah, I'm going to say Derrick Henry as well. He's been fantastic for Tennessee, and it's been really great to see what he's been able to do with that team. One of the highlights, definitely, of the season for sure.
After the Detroit Lions got penalized for a ridiculously soft roughing the passer call, does the NFL need to change the rule?
It's not about changing the rule. They just have to get the call right. Over the last 2 years, we've just seen a number of these just ridiculous roughing the passers, and that was the worst I've seen out of the last 2 years. He got penalized for tackling the QB. I don't know how you let that stand. You have to find the refs or do something, but that cannot change. That's embarrassingly soft. It's pathetic from the NFL. You have to fix that in the offseason now.
Yeah, kind of what you said. Like, it's not so much of you need to change the rule. Like, there should be a roughing the passer rule, but the officials need to know what roughing the passer really is because that clearly wasn't it. That was just a sack. That was a tackle. That's what you expect to see in a football game. There's no reason for that to be called roughing the passer.
Absolutely agree. I don't understand how they gave that call. It was ridiculous, and they definitely need to look at it. Look at this as it was really embarrassing. Seriously.
Should NFL teams be allowed to challenge pass interference?
Yes, simply because it's like fouls in the NBA, how they get like at least 10 wrong a game. There's about 3 pass interference they could easily debate in the NFL, and I think there's some egregious ones that the NFL referees do miss. I think you should be allowed to challenge one of them a game. Look, you're not going to get it right every single time, but I think that NFL teams should have the right to challenge it at least once per game. It's part of, the challenge rule.
Yeah, I agree, John. Especially since so many games can come down to a pass interference call, because late in the game when teams are trying to make a big throw, a big play, a pass interference could really make or break the game. And I feel like making sure you had the right call there is really crucial for a team. So I feel like when a team loses on a bad call, like it's really unfair. So like I feel like they should deserve the right to kind of challenge that.
Time.
Agreed. Challenges are a part of the game, and that's how it has to work. You need to go look into these things, and I think that's just generally how it goes. That's how it works in the NFL. You should be able to challenge any call, in my opinion.
Okay. So Darya, the next one is hockey, so you're not answering. What player not playing in the finals impressed What player not playing in the finals impressed you guys the most at the World Juniors?
Tim Stutzel. There's 2 sports, in hockey and in soccer. There's like golden generations of teams, and this is kind of Germany's golden generation. They have a lot of young talent that represented that German team. Tim Stutzel was at the center of that. He was terrific all tournament, and the Otter Center have a great pick, and he's kind of he's going to be part of Germany's future going into the next 10 years of international hockey play.
Yeah, I was going to pick Tim Stützle, but just for the sake of choosing something different, I'll pick his teammate, John Jason Piercock. I think, like you said, this was a great year for Germany. Like, they had a really talented team. I think Stützle was the number one. I think a close second was John Jason Piercock.
Okay. Now we're switching. Darya, you're on. Troy, you're off. Does Marcelo Bielsa deserve praise or criticism for the play style of Leeds in the Premier League?
Absolute praise. I don't know what fans expect from Leeds. Look, they've been competitive. They're in the conversation for top 10. They're a promoted team that haven't been in the Premier League for the last 15 years. They used to be a powerhouse, and they're not a top 6 side. He's playing attacking football every week in, week out, and I want to watch Leeds because they're the most exciting side. And I expect at least 5-goal thrillers from them every single time. If you're criticizing Leeds, then you have to stop watching soccer, because he's been phenomenal, and Leeds have been a revelation.
Well, I gotta be sorry. Well, I gotta be honest. I gotta criticize Leeds. I gotta be honest here, and I'm sorry. I love look, they're playing great football, but I'm gonna be honest. Sooner rather than later, they're gonna be caught out, and I do think that it's gonna start to show. You can come into a game and play great football, but at the end of the day, if you're not getting results, I know they're in top 10. That won't do it in their second year. We saw that with Sheffield, and I don't think it's gonna be the case for Leeds.
Okay. Is Sheffield the worst Premier League side ever?
It's hard to say. No, I mean, they have, Aaron Ramsey is a horrible goalie. They have a horrible defense and horrible strikers. The only thing that's mediocre on the team is their midfield. But even then, they're getting passed around because their defense and strikers they can't connect with that midfield. 2 points through 17 games. It's pretty embarrassing. I mean, they're competing with Derby for the worst, for the lowest point total ever, and I don't know if they're going to hit it. I really don't know if they're going to get 11 points this year. It's going to be a dogfight for them.
Yeah, 2 points in however many games. It's not even half of the season.
17, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. They are one of the worst teams I've seen in the Premier League by a country mile, to be honest with you. They have not performed. I'm sorry, they don't have the depth. And just like as I'm seeing the Leeds, they're just not getting results. They can play great football, but they're not getting results, and that is going to kill you in the Barclays Premier League.
Quickly, in a year where anyone can beat anyone, the only team that can't beat anyone is Sheffield.
Yes.
That's kind of saying something.
Okay. The biggest reason for the Premier League being so wide open?
I have to say, just the congested fixtures. I think it's also the dispersed skill level throughout the 19 teams, because we're discounting Sheffield. Each team has qualities on their day that can beat other teams. But I think the other question is, I think we have to question VAR. I think VAR has a lot of impact on a lot of games. You don't know, if you're going to get a penalty here. You don't know what the rules are necessarily. And I think just the games are really tight. They're really close. They're closely competitive. And I think the teams with the most squad depth are going to come out with, the best seasons or with the best overall season.
I hate to be that guy, but I generally do think it's because of the home and away fixtures being significantly different. I think it really does affect. You can have teams like Southampton going into Liverpool, or you can have other teams going into certain places that before would have been like crazy, and they're getting results. And even the smaller teams are getting results, and I think it's just because the fans are not there. I think it's actually impacting the levels of play.
No, you're definitely right on that.
Okay. Final question. Next manager to be sacked in the Premier League.
I mean, I'd imagine it's Chris Wilder now. I mean, Sheffield they have to expect, something. I mean, I feel like they're already relegated. I think they waited too long. The time to fire him was about 2 months ago. I don't know if they will fire him because I feel like they should have at some point. But I mean, if you're looking outside of Chris Wilder, I don't know. It feels like Chris Wilder has to be the next one to go because it's a result-based business and they haven't gotten a result in 4 months.
Yeah, Chris Wilder for me. They can't be playing like this anymore. I like they had a great season last season, but it's simple as is that they're not getting the results. And I'm sure he's a great manager on his day, but like honestly, he hasn't got the best out of his team this year.
Graham Potter and Steve Bruce are going to be the top three because also Brighton and Newcastle are severely underperforming and their fans are really not having it. But yeah, Chris Wilder has to be the next one to go.
Definitely.
Okay. So on that note, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to 5-5 Sports. As always, if you like what you are listening to, feel free to subscribe and join us next week. Bye.
See you guys next week.